Welcome everyone to GLR Week 2021. My name is Sierra Sanchez and I will be behind the scenes helping to produce this webinar. I have just a few housekeeping details before we get started. First, we would love for you to introduce yourself, so please use the chat box at the bottom of the screen to share your name, city or state, and your organization. Be sure when responding to select both panelists and attendees so that we all know who is here. All attendees are in listen-only mode, but we encourage your engagement by posting questions in the Q&A box and sharing your bright spots and silver lining insights and post-pandemic keepers in the chat box. We will dedicate the last portion of the conversation to respond to the questions you post during the discussion. This webinar is being recorded and is also being live streamed on Facebook Live, and a link to the recording and all related resources will be emailed to all who registered. The theme of GLR Week 2021 is Bright Spots and Silver Linings. It includes a week-long series of virtual events featuring how dozens of states and communities confronted by COVID-19 stepped up to meet the moment. They stayed the course toward early school success, pivoted to slow and stop learning loss, and now are working with key decision makers to accelerate equitable learning recovery. We encourage you to share examples in the chat box today of the ways in which you pivoted in response to the pandemic to help children stay on track. Thank you again for being a part of this week with us by participating in this plenary conference session. Today's webinar is one of 5 plenary events taking place as a part of GLR Week 2021. More information on these 5 sessions and the dozens of state and community events happening virtually across the country can be found on our conference site, glrweek2021.gradelevelreading.net. As you attend these sessions, we also hope you will join the conversation, sharing your bright spots and silver lining insights, lessons learned, and proposed pandemic keepers, the ideas, innovations, and insights from the pandemic that are worthy of continuation or replication, so they can be shared with other communities and groups. Examples of keepers we've heard so far include expansion of broadband access to more families, new protocols and practices that strengthen communications, and partnerships between teachers and parents. Please put your post-pandemic keepers in the chat box today. We are tracking your responses so we can share these keepers across the GLR network. We also invite you to share your keepers and reflections on today's conversation on social media, tagging us with @ReadingByThird on Twitter and @CampaignForGLR on Facebook with #GLR Keepers. Visit our conference website to register for additional sessions, check out our speaker and event lineup, and access resources, recordings, and other materials related to GLR Week 2021. All resources that you see shared as links in the chat will be compiled on the GLR Week 2021 site and CGLR's Community Learning for Impact and Improvement platform, also known as CLIP. Please take a few seconds to create a free account on CLIP if you haven't yet done so. Joining you now is Jenny Atkinson. Welcome again and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you so much, Sierra. I'd like to welcome all of you to today's Crucible of Practice Salon. This webinar series provides a deep dive exploration into how communities are approaching and moving the work to improve the early school success prospects of children from economically challenged families, neighborhoods, and communities. We are emerging from a time that demanded immediate reaction and responsiveness on the part of community leaders, partners, funders, and coalitions, and few of us had the luxury of extended planning cycles and excess time for reflection. One silver lining from this has been an unprecedented amount of innovation in a relatively short period of time. The challenge we now face is making sense of everything that changed and sorting out what worked and what we might want to keep. We've already heard from many communities that are sharing their stories about these keepers with us on CLIP. And you can continue to share stories on CLIP. And as Kiera said, please share them in the chat today or with us on social media. Among the range of keepers that CGLR communities have shared, many of them have fallen into 6 general content areas: telehealth, online and at-home parent and family support, online and at-home student support, learning pods and hubs, teacher professional development and support, and school-home community partnerships and teacher-parent partnerships. Today, we will hear about an initiative that falls into the content category of online and at-home student and family support. Many local CGLR sponsoring coalitions have stepped up and played critical roles in ensuring that our youngest learners had devices, connectivity, and ongoing support so that they could engage in learning and development during the past 16 months. These efforts were aimed at accelerating progress and sustaining momentum toward closing the digital divide which existed prior to the pandemic. We know we have more to do to tackle the systemic inequities in digital access on an ongoing basis after the immediate state of the emergency created by the pandemic ends. Our Crucible of Practice salons are an opportunity to dig deep into the work that communities are doing and make more visible not just the what, but also the how, with the goal of learning more about what it takes to be successful, as well as how to replicate models that are working. We believe that sharing what we've learned and gathering a conversation together will lead us all to do better work, get better faster, and grow to do this work at scale. I'm so excited that today we'll be able to do just that as we hear about an initiative that is boldly taking on the issue of ensuring digital access. In today's webinar, Bringing Digital Equity Home, the Suncoast Digital Access for All initiative, we will hear from 5 members of the Digital Access for All team at the Patterson Foundation in the Suncoast region of Florida. Presenters from the Digital Access for All team include Sherry Corrier, who serves as the initiative manager, John Ferguson, the project manager, Jake Harpikson, community engagement lead, Kiera Lewis, communications and engagement associate, and Maribel Martinez, initiative consultant. We'd like to acknowledge one other important member of the team who will not be presenting today, Laurie Stryker. We'll also be joined by some of the Digital Access for All initiatives community partners later in the webinar, and I'll let the team introduce those partners. We'll post bios for all the presenters in the chat. And so now I'd like to welcome the Digital Access for All team and turn things over to John Ferguson to get us started. Welcome, John.
Jenny, thank you. And before we move on from this slide, I'd just like to take a moment to really acknowledge Dr. Laurie Stryker, who was the inaugural initiative lead for Digital Access for All. And it was really her vision and leadership that has positioned not only this initiative, but our community in the Suncoast region for long-term collaboration and success. So a big thank you to Laurie as she is off on vacation enjoying herself. So with that, we'd like to start today in true the Patterson Foundation style with a question of the day. Perfect. So I'd like to invite you all to enter your thoughts in the chat box here. And the question is very simple. What is digital, or why rather, is digital access important to you, your community, and or society in general? So please do be active in the chat with responding to that question, and also feel free to post any questions in the Q&A box or comments in the chat as we move along. We will do our best to incorporate answers as we go. And as you're go ahead and posting that in the chat, Sierra, if we could advance to the next slide, and I'll give you a little bit of background on the Patterson Foundation. The Suncoast region is just south of Tampa along the west coast of Florida, and our area includes 4 different counties: Charlotte, DeSoto, Manatee, and Sarasota, with about 750,000 in total population. And it is a large mix between urban and rural. So many different types of communities and community members all exist within this collaboration. And before Digital Access for All was born, it came out of, we may remember in March of 2020, we had the great pause known as COVID-19 that really shifted a lot of the daily occurrence to an online format, especially for our littlest learners learning to learn remotely, and for others of us, we're learning to work remotely, perhaps for the first time. So the Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading and its community partners were very concerned with that very rapid transition to online learning and how it was affecting not only the students, but also families and others in the region, from everything from remote learning to telehealth to being able to participate in society in general as things quickly moved online without much alternative. So TPF is proud to serve as a regional accelerator for the Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading, which is expertly led by Beth Duda, who's the director of the Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading, who is with us today. So a big shout out to you, Beth. Hello, and thank you for all the work that you do to help forward those efforts in our community. And the Patterson Foundation works in ways that strengthen people, organizations, and community and foster wide participation. And that's really how Digital Access for All as an initiative works. And it's founded on the principles of cope, adapt, and innovate. Cope, adapt, and innovate is really the individual and organization's response to any unexpected challenge, whether it's a disaster or whether it's a global pandemic. Some days we're in cope, we're just like this poor icon hanging on for dear life there to try to see what we can do to survive the day. Sometimes we're adapting and learning how to handle our new circumstances, and sometimes we are innovating in ways that we could have never anticipated. What's important to know is that these are nonlinear. You can be in any one of these stages or anywhere in between these stages at any given time, both as an individual and as an organization. So our commitment was to help people get through those stages. So when we were all in the innovative space together, we could move forward and do something that would really make a difference together in the community, especially concerning digital access. So really this all began as an exploration. So Sierra, if we could go to the next slide. Perfect. And as an exploration, we really wanted to know, we knew that digital access was more than just the transition to online learning. We knew it was really complex and there was a lot to understand, but we didn't know everything that we did not know. So we started with interviews, and we started with interviews from national thought leaders and people who have been working in the space in digital equity for years. And we learned from them who else cares about this and who else we needed to talk to. And from that very first interview, it ended up being over 100 interviews, over 40 on the national stage and over 60 from a local and regional standpoint. Learning what is important to people, what is important around the issue, how does it affect our most vulnerable households and our most vulnerable learners? How do we think of this issue in a holistic way so that we can share that knowledge and then build towards solutions? So those two critical questions that have guided this entire initiative and guide us to this day are, who else cares about this and what can we do together? And that's how we've leaned into a real collaborative effort here, but it all began as an exploration, learning and sharing, which we'll hear more about from colleague Kiera Lewis here in a little bit, towards that collaborative effort, which will be evidenced by the community partner panel that you'll hear from later today. One of the things we discovered through these interviews is that there's really three essential elements to digital access. There is connectivity, which is that ability to connect to the internet in a reliable and affordable way. There's the device itself, which is the device that's the right device for what that person needs, right? So a brand new MacBook Pro may not be appropriate for a second grader, but they might need more than a mobile phone. So thinking about that right device for the right needs, and then the skills and support to use that device effectively and to be able to navigate the internet well. So I'd like to invite you to take a poll. So Sierra, if we could launch that poll, I'm curious what you think would be the most critical element of the three. Would it be connectivity, which is that ability to connect to a reliable internet source, the skills and support to use it, or the device itself? So if everybody could take a moment and participate in that, we'll give you about 60 seconds to do so. And then we'll talk a little bit more about what that all means and why. So Sierra, once we get a pretty decent amount of people participating, would you go ahead and share those results, please? Very interesting. We have votes in all categories. We have connectivity as the winner, so to speak, is what we think is the most critical. And I want to tell you, thank you, Sierra, for sharing. I want to tell you, everyone is right. All three elements are absolutely critical and work together. So you might be asking yourself, so why the trick question? Why are you asking me, which one is the most critical? And that's to point out that wherever you are is determining which of the three is the priority for you. Maybe you're in a rural area where the device isn't really the issue, but it's really hard to get a stable internet connection. Maybe you're in an area like I am where I can connect to the internet pretty much wherever I am and I have the right device, but maybe I don't have the skills and support to use it effectively. And I don't know how to do much beyond writing an email or answering an email. And so those elements all are important and all must be working together. You can think of them as a three-legged stool. Have you ever tried to sit at a table with a two-legged stool? It doesn't work quite as well. So those three together allow you to really have a seat at the table. And that is what digital equity is all about, is having that seat so that you can fully participate in today's society as it increases in digital dependence. So with that, I'm going to transition to my colleague Kiera Lewis, who's going to walk you through a little bit more about the learning and sharing elements that we discovered throughout Digital Access for All.
Thank you so much for that, John. Once again, DA4A's aspiration was all about learning as much as we could through interviews, webinars, and research. We came across many resources. Some were recommended to us and others we found while looking to understand digital access. And during the research phase, I mined major reports, documents, and interviews, then turned them into short reports that I synthesized based on key themes and innovative approaches. I'd like to share briefly 4 of the many key themes that emerged during the research phase. First, digital access is a basic necessity to connect to the various services that we see are shifting to an online environment. For example, learning has shifted online, working has shifted online, even accessing health or financial services has shifted online, and the list goes on and on. To participate in our modern society, you need 3 important elements, which leads me to the second key theme that John did touch upon. Those 3 essential elements, which are connectivity, devices, and skill support, are essential to achieve digital access for all. And you will continue to hear them throughout this webinar because they're just that important. But while we were learning about those 3 essential elements, we also came across barriers that make it really challenging for asset limited, income constrained, employed families, older adults, and communities to acquire one or more of these 3 essential elements. And these barriers include high cost and a lack of awareness of low cost plans or what's available and the available resources in the community. But the 4th key theme did reveal a bright side. There are efforts locally, regionally, and nationally by public, private, and nonprofit groups and agencies who are trying to address digital inclusion, digital equity, and digital access. For example, there are multiple collaborative efforts moving the needle on access to digital technology. And I came across the fact that there are community-wide efforts and broadband initiatives all focused on digital access. And locally, we discovered that there are agencies and organizations that are addressing the community's digital needs by providing free laptops for school-aged children, mobile hotspots, or even digital school skills and literacy training, and so much more. So that was a bright spot that was really encouraging. That was a lot, I know, and that's exactly how I felt after diving into all that research and being introduced to this topic for the first time. But in true TPF fashion, after gathering all that information, we didn't want to keep it to ourselves. Instead, we wanted to share all the things that we've learned and the resources that we found to help individuals, organizations, and communities coming into the space. And deciding what to share wasn't all that difficult because it made sense to share our learning based on the key themes that kept emerging. Deciding the best way to share all that information in a way that was easy to use and understand and navigate was the challenging part. In a traditional fashion, we began sharing information through the Patterson Foundation's websites, through blogs, the DA4A's monthly newsletters, as well as ongoing webversations, which is a TPF term for an interactive and virtual conversation. And those methods were very successful, yet we knew we needed an innovative approach that would make such a complex concept very digestible. So anyone, regardless of your experience, could begin or continue your journey of understanding digital access. And that's how the DA4A resource library became the innovative idea we were looking for, and it quickly became our shared aspiration. Making it come to life was a collaborative effort involving our entire DA4A team, as well as Stacy Sternberg, who was TPF's communications coordinator. We did the groundwork of storing our resources, documenting them in an Excel list, creating brief summary sheets for each one, and capturing cover photos to create a visual appeal. But it was really Stacy who came in and helped us put everything together and create little Brady Bunch boxes. And she went in and created each box for each resource title, filter keyword, summary sheet, link, and she really helped us breathe life into the DA4A resource library. An interesting aspect of that project was trying to create the navigation piece, since there are over more than 125 resources, but we wanted to make it easy for anyone to find the information that they needed. So we developed 11 filter keywords, all stemming from the key themes that we found once again, such as devices, education, and health. And with these 11 keywords, you can filter the resource library by topic of interest to find the information you need as it relates to digital access. And like I said, at this time, we have over 125 resources, and the resource library continues to grow and evolve, especially with new legislative developments and efforts to address the 3 essential elements. We're proud of the resource library because it demonstrates TPF's approach of connecting, learning, and sharing information in the context of helping connect those who are disconnected, use the internet in a meaningful way to learn, work, and play. Now I'd like to invite Sherry to turn on her video to share more about the Patterson Foundation More Than Money approach when it comes to strengthening the efforts of peoples, organizations, and communities.
Thank you, Kiera. And as everyone can see, there's been so much work done in this area in such a short time. To start off with talking more about More Than Money and the Patterson Foundation's approach, we'd like to go to the chat box. Got another question for you today. Really hope you join us in this one and stay tuned in. What are some of the ways a funder can contribute beyond writing a check or giving a grant? Go ahead and fill that in the chat box. And while you're doing that, we're going to start logging in those. We're going to take a look at those and see how those work with what we're about to talk about. So beyond funders and beyond a check are very important areas. And in each community, there's a wide range of funders. You and your communities may have funders like corporate, you may have family and private foundations, you might have United Ways. Other community-minded areas could even be government or others. But especially with funders, there's a real important method of how they can contribute beyond a check. So here's some list of some things that we'd like to bring forward. And especially important is the Patterson Foundation's role in all of these particular areas. Coalition building. In coalition building, obviously, trust is only as good as it is with all of your partners. And so getting a wide fostered participation really strengthens the impact of the types of individuals, organizations, and communities that you're working with. It expands the funder's role beyond the check and allows all of the participants to understand how important it is to the funder to be a part of something in your community. Not only that, but moving towards the backbone, that's providing access in a strong network of knowledge. So today you're seeing a number of consultants here that are with the Patterson Foundation, where we each bring a separate set of knowledge to this project. We also have the ability to spread that across the community and bring partners together so that the knowledge can be solid and that it allows everyone in the community to work together. As a system realigner, we conduct, we share, we research, and we bring on best practices. You're going to see some of those concepts here today. You've seen a few from Kiera, as she mentioned, all of the curated information that's been brought together and the resources that are making things available. But it's also about thought leaders bringing a system to realignment so that the best practices can be shared across all areas. Also, just important for a funder beyond any dollars is being a communicator, and especially with the Patterson Foundation and how working towards community conversations that provide a avenue towards shared aspirations. As many of you know, it's very difficult to get comments from and get people to share when you're out in the community. But in a special way, having the conversation is as important as what is the outcome. And from the communication standpoint, then you have the ability to be a policy advocate, investing to create long-lasting and widespread impact. I think we'd all agree that those are key and essential for the funders and create a value beyond a check or a dollar amount. In the learning agent area, we also talk about being able to connect organizations and communities, but you must listen first. Listening is so important. And many times, I think over the years, you would hear from nonprofit agencies or other partners that they were trying to bring forth information and it wasn't being heard. So the Patterson Foundation, and especially in the project we're talking about today, the Digital Access for All project, we have had 6 very important Webersations, which include people throughout the organizations across our 2-county and 4-county area, and also incorporate business, media, and also nonprofits. And of course, there's fundraising, inviting others with resources to participate, but making those resources amount to more than just one single participant. Being able to bring those to the forefront and to participate in the important work that's being done. And then lastly, as a grant maker, there is value in bringing dollars to the table. But as we're trying to indicate today, having that incorporation of thought and bringing forth all of your best practices and knowledges brings more than just money. In the Suncoast campaign for grade level reading, as it aligns with the campaign for grade level reading here, we also look at the 5 pillars of learning. So there's a very important role for funders beyond the check. It's making sure your community, all of the advocates, all of your elected officials understand the importance of working together. As we talk about driving impact home, we also look at the important areas of who's involved. So weaving all of these multi-sectors together makes such an importance in accessing technology. As we all know, in the last 18 months, it's been very difficult for everyone to get on the same page with technology. That's how the Digital Access Project came forward. That initiative fosters a wide amount of inclusion, and the result is a large amount of well-being. So we touch people of all ages and all backgrounds, but we'd like to make a special note today because we really are looking at ALICE families. And that term is a very important one. That's asset limited, income constrained, and employed. Those are the people that we're very, very concerned about. We want to lift them up. We want to help bring them forward. And so businesses also participate in driving this impact, but we are connecting them with people and the organizations because we're not sure what kind of digital skills the businesses need as they evolve as well. So having that connection to being able to lift up access through technology is going to make people more powerful and more eligible for higher paying jobs. In our nonprofits, we found that enhancing their ability to work with people and provide more assistance is obviously always been a goal, but through technology and some of the techniques you're going to see today, some things you've heard about already from John and Kiera, and what you're going to see from Jake, our other team member, and Maribel coming forward, will show you that this can be taken even farther to drive impact by being able to help individuals not only just by phone, but being able to allow them to learn digital literacy. In our government world, as you probably all are understanding, there's a lot of funding coming from the federal government through various new inclusion acts. And so one of the things that's been very important to this project is to make sure to connect all of the local, state, and federal government access, not only at local government levels for services, but also in our education system with the gaps that are currently existed. In the media, a very important aspect of the Patterson Foundation has been the Aspirations Journalism Project. It's bringing forth a broader effort and strengthening and broadening knowledge of people about digital literacy, about devices, skills, and training. And education, we're still trying to close that gap, and that's a very important thing under your campaign for grade level reading. And obviously, the digital world is so important to making that move forward. And then lastly, of course, as we just talked about, fostering that widespread inclusion by working with funders through community solutions. The project has now evolved into some solutions in action, and you're going to hear about most of those today. But just to go back real quickly and tell you how we got here, because as we've moved along, the action is so important. We've emphasized and embraced technology for all, making sure that we moved a smaller amount of people, which we call our small tent, into a big tent, which is a large group of people, all of which I've already gone over, people, businesses, government, funders, all into that bigger tent of understanding and learning about what the gaps are so that we can move forward with actions and solutions. And some examples of that, as we said, are bringing together the American Rescue Plan and all the communities as to towards broadband infrastructure improvements. Secondly, moving solutions towards gathering, sharing information about the gaps. You're going to see in just a moment in more detail with the devices, skills, and training matrix that's going to help everyone know, at least in our 4-county region, where the gaps are so that we can move forward. Promoting our pilot programs to test the waters. This has been an exciting endeavor that later you'll hear from our great local community panel of how digital navigators can enhance and move solutions by being able to deal in more depth with their customers. And then another example, and not just all of these, but this one is connecting the community leaders, as we mentioned. We were lucky to be able to work with the Federal Communications Organization about emergency broadband benefit. And if you've all been following any of that status right now, you know that that provides an assistance to people to reduce their bill for connectivity. There are efforts underway to try to expand that, and then the American Rescue Plan, which I previously discussed. So as we look at all these solutions and we start to talk about what some of them are, I'd like to hand it off to my team member, Jake Harpickson, so that he can go over this the devices, skills, and training matrix.
Well, thanks, Sherry. I appreciate that. And, hopefully by now everyone's getting a real sense of the importance that the Patterson Foundation places on trying to engage with the community and to create collaborations that extend beyond, as we talked about a few minutes ago, you're just merely writing checks or giving out grants. And I looked through some of the responses that those of you who are on the webinar gave to, ways to get folks involved beyond just giving grants and money. And those were convening partners, collaborating, relationship building, shared aspirations, and all of those things are really at the center of what we do. Also went back and I looked at what those of you who responded, some of the responses to the very first question, which was, why is digital access important? And, there's some really great answers there. And one was connecting families, especially those living in poverty, with much needed resources. And another one was to be able to cross between education, health, and other services, and be able to make people, both aware of and able to receive those services. And that really is what is behind our digital access services matrix. As we've talked about, over the course of the past 6 to 7 months, we've held 6 webversations with partner organizations to learn about and seek solutions for the digital access needs in our community. We wanted especially to look at how those needs were impacting our Alice families and households. And out of those conversations and those webversations that we had, out of the discovery phases of those, there came an aha moment where, as we were having these conversations with groups, and these were groups where we would have 30 to 50 people all together at the same time, everyone came to a realization that there were lots of organizations that were out there working with their clients and constituencies to address the digital access needs of their clients and constituents and their students and so forth. But there was a lack of knowledge about what others in the community were doing. And so there was a lot of working in silos that was going on in that. And, this led to service gaps. It led to delays in meeting the needs of those people most affected by COVID-19 and the lack of digital access. It also led to redundancy, or it led to places where organizations were trying to do things that were not really within their mission. They had been forced into them by COVID-19, but it was really putting a strain on their time, their resources, and their missions to what they needed to be able to accomplish. And then there was a third element where there were groups that felt frustrated because they felt like they were providing and they had all of these resources and all of these tools that were out there, but nobody else knew about them. And so out of those conversations, what has developed was an idea for an easily accessible reference tool that could be used to identify services that different organizations offered. And that was the birth of our digital access services matrix. as I mentioned, the matrix is designed to be a pretty comprehensive but quick reference guide that is based upon population served, services provided related to the three essential elements. And as we also were going along, we realized that we needed to add, we're going to dig deeply in here in the next section of the webinar, but that was the idea of digital navigation and having digital navigators that were able to provide these services across the board. As we formed this idea, our team started to put together a matrix and tried to identify the sort of buckets of information that would be valuable to the different partners and the different organizations that were operating within our community. And then what we did is we put together a Google form and we sent out a survey to those organizations, more than 100 of them in our 4-county area, and soon we'll have more than that too, but to try to get them to send us information that we could then begin to populate the matrix. The matrix is still in its early development right now, and it's generated great interest from the school districts, especially from social workers in the school districts that are trying to help families meet needs, also from local government agencies, and also, of course, from the nonprofit service sector and nonprofit service providers. So I think that now, if we're ready, I'd like everybody to put on their best Keanu Reeves glasses, and let's take a dive into the matrix and we'll get a look at what this is all about. So here is the matrix, and as you'll see, much like Keanu Reeves in the matrix, it's got a whole lot of information that is here, but it's all information that's meant to be extremely useful for service providers. So you'll see over in the left-hand column, what we have done is that we are collecting information on organizations' names. And what we wanted to do there is this is meant to be a tool that anybody can go to and they can find the services. If they have a client who is sitting in front of them, or if they have a student and a family that is sitting in front of them, and they need to know, where can we get devices? Where can we get skills and support training? Where can we find hotspots? All those sorts of things. This is meant to give it to them, and we'll go more into that as I go along. But under organizations' names, we wanted to not only list the organizations, but we felt there was a need to be able to have people get more information about those organizations. So each of the organizations, as we put them in, is a hot link that goes to the organization's website so that people can look at that and they can get an understanding whether, that is the organization they need to reach out to. As I said, the matrix is still under development, but you'll see under organization, we also are trying to identify the primary contact people with each of the organizations, primary contact people who are involved in digital access needs. So not necessarily the CEO or the vice president that is at that organization, but who is the direct contact that's going to be able to answer people's questions about digital access. What is that person's phone number? And what is their email address? Again, trying to streamline information, make it easy for people to get to that information. Next, we wanted to make sure that we were identifying populations served. Obviously, when we're talking about a 4-county area, and I think as John alluded to, digital access needs depend upon sort of where you're coming from and who you're serving. So we identified 4 basic groups that we wanted to be able to identify quickly. And those were older adults, students, families, employees, and workforce. So for each of the organizations, they can go through and they can check which of these populations they serve. Then we wanted to look at the counties that they served. As we mentioned from the start, we have 4 counties that are within the Patterson Foundation's sort of scope of what we do. And those are Charlotte, DeSoto, Manatee, and Sarasota counties. But we didn't want something that was going to be too exclusive because many of the organizations that we work with they deal in multiple counties. So we wanted something that was going to be easy to access in that way. Then we wanted to be able to look at digital navigators. And I'm not going to go in depth into digital navigators right now because you're going to learn a whole lot more about what they are and how they work in a few moments. But digital navigators are essentially individuals who are able to help families and students and others with the full scope of digital access needs. But we thought it was important to be able to identify, were those digital navigators on site? Were they available online? Could people call and talk with those folks? So we put that in there as well. Then we wanted to look at the three essential elements that we talked about previously. And so the first of those is connectivity. And what we wanted to do under connectivity is we wanted to look at important things like who provides hotspots and whether they give them away for free, or if they lend them out, how long do they lend them for? Does their organization help to pay for low-cost internet subscriptions? Do they offer public Wi-Fi? And if they do, what are the hours that they offer that public Wi-Fi? All of these are important questions that that those underserved families need to know in particular. Then we looked at devices. And so we looked at computers, we looked at tablets, and we looked at smartphones, and we thought it would be good to be able to let people know quickly. Are these things that different organizations offer for free? Do they offer, some organizations offer them for a very small or low cost to people. Some lend them out. Do they also have low-cost smartphones? There actually is an organization that is in our area called the Sarasota Technology Users Group, and they not only refurbish computers and give them out to Alice families and households, they also do the same with smartphones. Then we wanted to know if the organizations had computer labs that were on their facilities, and if so, were those available only for their workforce, or were they available to the public? How many stations were available, and was there a time limit on those sorts of things? And finally, we wanted to look at skills, training, and support. And there we're talking about everything from basic computer skills. So do you know how to do something as simple as turn on your computer, how to be able to log in, how to be able to access email and so forth, on up to understanding software applications, Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, you name it, to advanced digital skills that could be everything from coding and programming and so forth. And then furthermore, do they provide job and employment training skills and support? Finally, we wanted to look at where those locations and support were provided. And so, was it something where they provided it in person? Did they do it via Zoom or online? Did they do it over the phone or via in-home services? So, as I say, this is still being developed right now. We're receiving information on a daily basis from the organizations that we sent out our initial survey to. They are notifying us of other groups that should be listed here, and we then are reaching out to them. The idea is that ultimately we want to have a living document, and right now this is hosted on the Digital Access for All website through the Patterson Foundation via a link. And the link is something that all of the partnering organizations are encouraged to both put on their website so that they can easily access it, as well as to make sure that if they're schools, that their social workers know where that link is. If they are nonprofit service providers with digital navigators, that they know where those links are and so forth as well. But ultimately, the Patterson Foundation does not necessarily want to be the owner of this. And so there's also talk out there, does this eventually evolve to where one of our community partners, perhaps it's the libraries, perhaps it is folks with the 211 system, perhaps it is an organization that we just haven't even come across yet that may be best to house this and be able to have it in a live web format that people can access easily. So all of those are items that we are continuing to evolve as this goes forward. But I think that, and I hope that you agree, as you've had a chance now for a few minutes to learn about this, that this is a really valuable resource and a tool that is something that does accomplish those things that were mentioned earlier, as far as how can we create better partnerships? How can we engage each other more knowledgeably, and how can we truly create a community-based initiative that responds to the needs, the digital access needs of our Alice families and households. So that completes my presentation, and what I would like to do now is I would like to turn it over to Maribel Martinez, who is our wonderful consultant that has been developing our digital navigation pilot program. So Maribel, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jake. I'm honored and proud to have been approached by the Patterson Foundation to support the Digital Access for All initiative, through which the Digital Navigator pilot was born. The pilot and its curriculum are an amalgamation of my lived experiences, having worked on digital inclusion for 6+ years in public-private partnerships nationally. And 2 of those years were actually spent in digital navigation in the Southeast before that role even had a name. So this opportunity to talk with you about digital access and digital navigators is also important to me because my first career was actually as a K-12 teacher. I was also a reading specialist for a while, and then I transitioned into education program management. So I am thrilled to support CGLR. I consider digital equity to be an extension of my education career. And so now in my consulting practice, I sometimes have the opportunity to blend both of those worlds, education and digital inclusion, which for me is such a thrill. But it also speaks to the great need that exists to advance good teaching and access to exceptional learning opportunities and digital equity. So realizing that this will be a brief overview, I'm happy to respond to questions individually beyond today's presentation, but you'll also have the option to engage during the Q&A portion. Next slide, please. COVID-19 disrupted every system, every industry. We can all agree on that. And as a result, TPF really understood the disruption and set out to learn more about its effect on students and their families, especially ALICE families. So of course, they found that the need for connectivity, devices, and training penetrated across every aspect of daily life. And while we know that our lives are increasingly digital, many are left out of the equation because of economics, or they're just reticent to this change because they may not view the internet as relevant in their lives. Both of these barriers, affordability and relevancy, are exactly what digital navigators are trained to support with. And that helps advance digital inclusion and other things like workforce development. About 60 million people across the country are without internet access today. Recently, the Pew Research Center published an article on worries about life in 2025 and why digital navigators are poised to support with engagement in digital life, including the fact that inequality and injustice are magnified in society today. And as risk grows, security must also grow. Privacy falls and authoritarianism rises. So these are all concerns that were voiced on this Pew article. Others include threats to work. Those will intensify with automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, and globalization. Misinformation will be rampant. I think we're all experiencing that. And of course, people's mental health will be challenged. So with those concerns in mind, digital navigators will play a key role with constituents to advance opportunities for asset-limited people. Next slide, please. So digital navigators are in the community. I was one, you could be one. They're empathic, independent people, self-starters usually in the workplace, highly responsive, very solutions-oriented. They're people. They love to work with other human beings. They're tech savvy or tech adaptive, and they're really there to help understand and advance the issue of digital equity, realizing that either they themselves have been impacted by the digital divide or they know others who have. And so realizing the pivotal role that digital navigators perform, I'm pleased to reinforce that digital navigator training is an allowable expense under the American Rescue Plan Act, which will hopefully spur greater interest in the role. And of course, more importantly, the deployment of digital navigators in the community across the country. Next slide, please. So by the time I joined the initiative as a consultant in March of this year, many local organizations in the Patterson Foundation's orbit in their local geography were already contributing and collaborating. But what bubbled up from those interactions was that as much as they all served the same people, there were knowledge gaps regarding who did what. And so that was a little bit about what Jake was addressing with the Matrix, which I think is just a fabulous tool. Most importantly, they all had one thing in common. Their constituents' lack of digital access really acted as a barrier to fully realizing their missions and impacting their day-to-day work with clients, right? So this is a huge problem. The Patterson Foundation became interested in supporting the Digital Navigator pilot because trainees would be able to address all 3 legs of the digital access stool: low-cost broadband connectivity, affordable devices, and digital literacy training. And for the 3 partner community organizations that you will meet in just a few moments, this is especially important. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Sherry, who will take us into the panel conversation with our esteemed community partner agencies.
Thank you, Maribel, and hopefully you will stay right here with us because Maribel is going to be a part of this panel discussion as well. And it's really a privilege and an honor to bring our panel members on for this portion and probably the most exciting part of the presentations. And you can actually hear how these types of solutions to action have really started to impact. And so let's welcome Margie Genter is our Vice President of Mission Services with Goodwill, Minnesota. Margie, welcome. Happy to have you here at the panel. Also, like to welcome Lori Gentile from our Women's Resource Center, who's our Client Services Director. Lori, welcome to you. And then lastly, we want to welcome Lisbeth Oskolvika, who's with our Family Engagement Director portion of the Unidos Now. Thank you so much for being on the panel, and hopefully you all will see that we are able to provide some information to everyone. So as a panel member, we wanted to ask you some questions, but we want you to feel that you could expand upon them so that the audience will have an opportunity to understand what your role in our Digital Navigator pilot is. So when you first heard about the Digital Navigators, what resonated with you? What was the most resonating thing? Let's go to Margie first. Margie.
Thank you for asking that question, Sherry. For us at Goodwill, the fact that the Patterson Foundation was offering this concrete, intentional, community-wide solution was so valuable because there was this this notion always that digital literacy was important, but now it's critical. And I was thinking about the people that we met in 2020 and our community connection, that like the gentleman that came in and needed to interview, and it was going to be on a Zoom, and he didn't know what that was. There was a man who needed to appear before a judge, and he needed to Zoom, and his phone was not allowing him to do that. It was a flip phone. So a job seeker who got a job but needed to do online training and didn't have connectivity. And then all those seniors that wanted to sign up for a COVID vaccination and were told they had to do it online and didn't have the device or the connectivity or the knowledge of how to do that. So we were glad that they found their way into our office, but we wonder what happened to everybody else. And that was the concern. So
thank you, Margie. Those are such great, important points. Lisbeth, you want to share with us what resonated for you at Unidos Now?
Sure. And actually, before I explain what resonated with us, I would like also to give a little bit of context, what we have been doing before we heard about the Digital Navigator pilot. So during the pandemic, we were able to provide assistance to families who found themselves without access to reliable devices, like Margie mentioned, or internet and available to use technology. And in some cases, we provided individual and group training sessions to help families access Zoom and also their children's schoolwork. We created videos in Spanish with step-by-step instructions to help them use, for instance, Zoom. And in some cases, we needed to work with their older children so they could assist their parents. While providing devices to some families, we found out that they didn't know how to use the laptop, how to connect to internet, or they didn't have the means to pay for internet. So, and Unidos Now help them to some extent with our own resources and those available through our community partner. So, but it was not enough. And we were just doing a reactive action. And when we heard about the Digital Navigator pilot and the proposal to create an integrated and intentional way, so intentional way to serve clients according to their specific needs, that resonated with us and the Unidos Now team, because not all the families need the same things at the same times. So they are different. So that's what resonated with us.
Thank you. And Laura, you've been serving a special population as well. Would you like to share with us how you became to be a part of this project?
Yeah, I was ecstatic when I heard about the Digital Navigator program because it really fits so well into the model for the Women's Resource Center. So we're the type of place where women can come when they really don't know where else to go. And our volunteers and our staff are trained to listen to the clients, try to discover what their problems might be, and then really match them with either programs at our site or programs in the community that can help them. So obviously, during the pandemic, it became more and more obvious how difficult it is for our clients to navigate without technology. And we actually had programs, and we currently have programs where we can try to help with that, you know, whether it's procuring devices or internet service, but with limited resources, you can only help so many clients. So with the Digital Navigator program, we'll be able to greatly expand the amount of clients that we can reach.
Thank you. And Maribel, now that you've heard from your 3 excellent organizations that are in the training, is there any impact on how do you address the training with those 3 from hearing some of the main key points?
Sure. So they all serve a lot of the same people, but they go about it in different ways. What I love about these 3 agencies coming forward is that they've identified key staff, but they're different as well. So we have full-time staff, part-time staff, and volunteers coming forward to go through the training process to become digital navigators. And as you can imagine, they serve different functions in the organization, albeit vital functions. So the training doesn't really need to change according to the role that one plays in the organization. Digital navigators can perform their role at home on the kitchen table, within a brick and mortar building, out in the field, engaging one-to-one with clients. They can be volunteers, they can be paid staff, and they can be cross-trained. So a lot of what we're seeing across the country is the cross-train model, where you have someone who already has a full-time role and is taking on additional digital navigator responsibilities just because it really fits into the service model, the direct service model that the agency already performs.
Thanks. And Lori, we just got through meeting some of your group that are being trained and going through their first session. And now provide a little background on each one of them are very different. Identify a few of the traits you use to select your 5.
Well, I think what you'd find naturally with our staff and with our volunteers is that everyone is trained to listen and understand a problem, being extremely empathetic with our clients, and then be able to, you know, roll up their sleeves and help them with whatever needs to be done. So every one of them, regardless of how technical they are or they aren't, one of the things we chatted about this morning was even folks who weren't really technical at the beginning of the pandemic had no choice. We all became tech savvy because we had to.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisbeth, I'm sure identifying who your volunteers and who your staff are going to be as digital navigators, you had some special areas as well. Would you like to share?
Sure. So we identify 3 digital navigators, and the main characteristic is that they needed to be bilingual, English and Spanish, because in order to effectively serve the families, we need to teach parents and some of the students in their native language while learning something new. And 2 of the navigators are part-time staff members that actually they went through our programs while they were in high school, and they just graduated from college. They work with our elementary, middle school programs and high school clubs. And these 2 young women, number one, are very comfortable with technology, so that's great. At the same time that they are very sensitive to the students' needs and their culture, because they understand the strengths and limitations of the families that we serve, because they themselves face challenges while they were navigating the school system, technology, helping with their parents, and trying to enter into college. So that's why we choose those 2 young women. And the 3rd navigator is one of our parents' ambassadors. So, and she joined at the beginning as a volunteer, but she will be offered a fair compensation while supporting the Digital Navigator pilot. We know how valuable and important it is for our parent ambassadors to have the opportunity to provide peer-to-peer support. The Latino community is eager to help, and if you just give them the environment and the trust, so I think that they always are willing to provide support for others. So this is the characteristic in general of our digital navigators, fully understand the needs of the Latino community, and they express that they would like for parents and the students to become confident and independent using technology.
Sherry, if I
Great.
can add, one of the
Sure.
things that makes, I think, a candidate the ideal digital navigator is that they already have trusted relationships with the people they serve. And so that was definitely a common theme across all three of these agencies. One of the most important aspects of digital navigation work is meeting people where they are. It simply will not work if someone tells a client that they must sign up for internet access, that they will use this computer, and that they're going to like it. Gosh darn it, it just will not work. And so one of the things that we talk about in the training, and we identify tools and strategies, and we work with them during the training, is to use those tools and strategies to help make their work just easier, to remove those barriers, to remove those obstacles. Digital navigation work is not boring. It really reminds me of being in the classroom. There is probably never going to be an instance where you're going to run across a client interaction experience that is identical to another. Every day will be different. Every client will be different. But with solutions-oriented people and empathic people and people who are adaptive and really want to make a difference in their community, I really think this is going to be such a successful, groundbreaking project, and I'm so happy to be a part of it.
Amazing. And Margie, I know, piggybacking on what Maribel just said, you have a special population you serve, and you had to select some people. Tell us a little bit about that.
I have Yvette, and she is a full-time staff person. She runs the Goodwill Community Connection and will be highly accessible. So people will be able to see her Monday through Friday, 8 o'clock to 4:30. She'll take walk-ins. And when Maribel was talking about who makes a good navigator, it sounded like she was describing Yvette, you know, because she's very empathetic, compassionate, patient. Yvette is the type of person who's going to pull up her chair next to you, and she's not going to tell you how to do it. She's going to show you how to do it. So she's very comfortable with her own digital skills and also bilingual. So we're really proud that and certain that she's going to serve a lot of people and help a lot of folks with those technology issues.
And there are going to be lots of learning, Sherry, to come out of this. We're building in and baking in lots of opportunities to collect data. So we really look forward to, at the conclusion of this pilot, being able to share all that wonderful information with you. As you probably can guess, these agencies already do a fantastic job of being able to log in their experiences with clients. They have particular ways that they track their outputs and their outcomes. So we're just going to build upon all those wonderful systems in digital navigation.
Yes. And to circle back around to our colleague Jake, who was just on with the Matrix, that's designed to also help enhance your digital navigators. And as that information is filled in the Matrix, it just becomes the opportunity to share more and more resources across the region for each of us to be able to serve. So, you know, closing out on just some of the questions for today, before we go to some more Q&A, just let's talk about, why is the Digital Navigator pilot important to your organization now? In the history of where you're at in your organization right now, what makes it important, and how do you hope to use it? And let's go ahead back to Margie. We'll start off with you, since you've been really sharing about what Goodwill's important work is.
Thanks, Sherry. When you think about all of the things that we did last year that we never thought we'd need to know how to do, like a meeting with your doctor on a Teams meeting, or Zooming with your family, or conducting a job search online, or helping your child go to school. The timing has really been critical. What we want to accomplish is just to help people learn how to meet their own needs. probably the best time to start this process would have been somewhere back in early 2019, but the second best time is right now, So we lost the opportunity early in 2019 when we don't want to miss the opportunity again. So there's never been a better time to have a digital navigator.
Yeah. Lori, where the Women's Resource Center is, it's in the place and time at which you're at right now. How important is a program like this?
It really incredibly important. We try to always monitor changes and what's happening with our clients, and try our best to keep up with it. And as I mentioned, with the pandemic, really demonstrated how significant and problematic the digital divide really was. And, when we watched clients who couldn't access resources such as unemployment, or families who are trying to learn, children learning remotely at home and internet was spotty or the devices weren't working, it really resonated that families just can't survive without devices and internet and then learning how to use it. So this is just perfect timing. I think it's going to help us extend our reach and just help more of our clients and their families.
Maribel, I want to come back to you on something. When the first question was asked about the three-legged stool and the importance of it, 57% of the people on the call today said that connectivity was their most important aspect. 32 said skills and 11 devices. Did that surprise you?
No, it didn't surprise me. So I would say that, sure, internet connectivity is like opening the door. I would say that devices is walking in and putting your keys down. And then the training is where you actually sit down in your easy chair and, turn on the TV. So it really is just part of a process, but not one aspect of the stool can exist without the other. So if you just get someone access, so what? They're not going to do anything with it. We certainly don't want to promote smartphone usage, even though we know smartphone penetration is ubiquitous. We don't promote smartphones as part of digital navigation because what we want to avoid is people saying, yeah, sure, I have internet because I have this. That's not what we need. And we don't want to rely on public Wi-Fi, even though we know we need it. And then the second aspect is getting them a device that they know how to use, but primarily that they can afford to purchase. But if they don't know how to use that device, it's a really expensive paperweight. So it just sits. And then finally, you have to learn how to use it. But I'll say that digital navigators are trained, certainly the way that I take them through the training. It's all about helping people to come into digital access and come into the digital world in a way that suits their lifestyle. There's no one size fits all with digital access. I think a senior living home alone is going to have very different needs and wants with the internet as opposed to a secondary student or even a working age adult. So realizing and understanding where people are, meeting them where they are, so important. So part of the work that we do in digital navigation is really getting to know our families, which I'm sure these agencies have already done with their client intake process. So again, we're just building on an already wonderfully built process.
Thank you. Elizabeth, thinking about what Maribel was bringing up, I'm thinking, you maybe share a little bit with the group here that's on the webinar about the type of individuals Unidos Now is working with and how actually, when we talked about devices, what kind of challenges do you have with providing devices and then the skills?
Well, the families definitely, they have different needs. And for instance, in students in high school, most of them, they had technology at home because it was given by the school district. But some of them, they miss, for instance, a skill support. Meanwhile, parents, when we were trying to connect for the Zoom meetings, we realized that they didn't have technology available for themselves to enter in training sessions as well. And plus, it was a really huge gap that all the parents lack digital literacy skills. So that's why we needed to provide sometimes group supports or like I mentioned, help with their older children in order for them to get access to the resources that we were providing at that point of time.
Bringing up the point about students and especially the connection here with where we're at, grade level reading and the Suncoast campaign for grade level reading, and knowing that Beth Duda, who's our leader in that, has over 3,100 students in our Suncoast region that are a part of that. You know, maybe in Lori, are you seeing with the type of folks that you're dealing with at Women's Resource Center, is there a gap then that you're seeing between mothers, families, and their ability to maintain their connections for the students that they might also have?
Connections at work. I mean, for school, trying to remotely learn from school.
Both, all of those areas, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see the whole gamut. So our clients cross every age group, every ethnicity, and we have lots of seniors that are our clients, which is part of our program has been to try to help them with digital literacy as well. We have so many families that truly struggled while trying to help their children through school. And then, of course, being able to access resources for themselves. So whether it's benefits or, the child tax credit or unemployment or, just any one of those benefits that you need to be online, getting your vaccinations, as Margie spoke to earlier. So it's, just helping yourself and helping your children has both, been a struggle.
Yes. And Maribel, one of the things that we've been talking about is the speed in which connectivity is available. And I think it's one of those things that people just assume if they have a device that everybody's speed is the same and there's no differences and no problems. You want to share with the panel here and with our audience some of the ways in which people can check those different speeds, or they can become more accessible to being better connected?
Sure, we can share those as part of the resources. That's certainly something that we cover in the Digital Navigator training. I'll say that hopefully the tide of opinion is changing. So we know that policies are hopefully being driven to include higher speeds. Up until now, it's been the requisite, 25 up, 3 down, and those are upload and download speeds, and they're simply just not enough. I mean, for people to be able to work from home, for children to be able to learn from home, with everything being all about streaming, with textbooks being online, and all kinds of other resources requiring high-speed internet. But just realizing that, families tend to kind of live together, right? We don't just all live in one different place, separate from one another. So the pandemic was really that highlight that really helped us to understand that if you have 4 devices being streamed at the same time, you're going to have needs for speed. However, the low-cost offers that we feature as part of the training for digital navigators are all high quality offers. We do not advocate for lower speeds at a lower price. That would just be adding insult to injury. So they can look forward to really grabbing onto resources that will help them to help their clients to find the resources and the subscriptions that they need to suit, again, that individual or household lifestyle. I'll also say that before the pandemic, it was perfectly acceptable for a family of 4 to have maybe 1 or 2 devices in the home. And by devices, I mean computing devices, not smartphones. I think post-pandemic, we know that there's pretty much a one-to-one correspondence that's needed now with laptops and human beings. It's no longer acceptable to share devices. Certainly the demands that are being placed on students and adults really just don't leave any room for that sharing to happen. So all of these things are covered in the Digital Navigator training. But yes, there are resources out there where you can do speed tests on your current connection. And I'm sure many of the folks who are joining us today are probably really curious to see what they're actually paying for. I will be able to put those resources out there too.
Great. Very helpful. And I think with our panel, we'd like to do a little closing with the panel and just anything else that you'd like to share that we might not have covered. You've all talked about peer-to-peer relationships. It is the hope and the desire of the Patterson Foundation as we help provide access to this digital navigator training, that it's something that then the three of you, which by the way, we want the audience to know, these fine organizations stepped up and volunteered to be a part of this pilot, feel comfortable taking out into the community and helping to train other organizations and spreading the digital navigator skill set. Margie, in closing, anything you'd like to add?
It is so exciting to be part of this. I feel a little bit like a pioneer, and I'm honored to, our whole organization is honored to have that role. And we can't wait to the day where there's digital navigators everywhere until they're no longer needed, because everybody has the skills and the technology and connectivity that they need.
Definitely. Elizabeth, would you like to have any closing comments?
Well, definitely. We are looking forward to collaborate with these amazing organizations here present, Women Resource Center and Goodwill, on this pilot. So I am like a pioneer as well, Margie. And we love to be sharing and learning from of our success stories also in the gaps, because the success of this pilot will translate into a win for the Alice families.
That's right. And Lori, Elizabeth brings up the Alice families, and thank you for circling back around to that, because that is a primary uplifting of what we're really trying to do here in all age groups. But any closing comments that you'd like to share?
I would just say I love being a pioneer, so I'm all in for any place I can pioneer. But honestly, just a huge thanks to the Patterson Foundation, because we, have really tried hard to make a difference in this space for our clients. And it's not easy, as you all well know. It's a tough road. And I feel very honored to be able to participate in the Digital Navigator program. And to Margie's point, I mean, I hope we see them at all of the organizations in our counties and or across the country, because it's just really, I think, a wonderful opportunity to help us, to help our clients.
Thank you so much. And before we turn it back over to the Campaign for Grade Level Reading staff, we'd like to say a big thank you to them across the country for allowing us to bring this webinar, and with the exciting work that's being done in the Digital Access for All project. You've heard us mention Beth, Duda, and the Suncoast Grade Level Reading Project, and the importance of the expansion of that and the number of students that are being worked with. And also, again, to the initiative developer, Dr. Lori Stryker, who really put this project on the map and brought us forward so quickly. But lastly, I want to mention the president of our Patterson Foundation, Deborah Jacobs. And I think I'd like to have the opportunity to say, when you talk about bringing digital access home and you talk about funding beyond the check, you've got to have a leader who has that kind of insightful vision that allows everyone to expand and provide their expertise and work together. And we certainly have that. If you'd like to look at any of the other initiatives and dig deeper into what we've talked about today, the pattersonfoundation.org is the website. You can look at and click on the menu where the initiatives are, and you can see over 20 exciting initiatives, but especially the two that we've talked about today. So in closing, thank you. We would like to make sure that we brought to light some really important information. We've moved you to trying to make some action in your community, and your aspirations can be brought forward about digital access and everything that more than money can bring. And thank you so much. And back to you.
Thank you, Sherry, and thank you to everybody on the team and the panel. I think if everybody would like to get on camera now, we can have some additional Q&A. And for those of you who are participating in the webinar, if you want to post a question in the Q&A, we would love to be able to answer any of the questions that you may have. And while we wait for some questions to come through, I would love to just ask a quick question about how you see for a community that would want to start doing this work. I think it's hard to pick one piece of it, right? We've talked about the stool. It's hard to pick one thing to start with, but are there things that you've learned that you feel like a community just starting, it would be helpful for them to know or to begin the process with?
Jenny, I'd like to respond to that. I think in our experience, it starts with a single conversation, right? And I just want to go back to those two critical questions. It's who else cares about this and what can we do together? And if those questions frame your interactions, who you connect with, and how you work together going forward, then this is a potential result for you, right? It all starts with that single common conversation. And much like a hydra, if you're a Greek mythology nerd like me, every time you have an interview, you ask that question and 2 more interviews pop up. We started with 1 interview on the calendar, and within 3 months, we did over 100. So the hardest part of getting started sometimes is getting started. So it's just having that initial conversation and then building your team together to really address whatever is important to your community, right? It's not arriving with the answer, it's asking the right questions and meeting people where they are and going forward together.
Great. Thank you, John. Anyone else want to comment on that before we go to a couple other questions that we have here?
Jenny, I'd like to jump in and just expand on what John just added. So it's also asking the right questions for sure, but it's that willingness to sort of go down a path that you really don't know how it's going to turn out. So that comfort with ambiguity, that comfort with discovery is really essential, and I think this team does it fabulously.
Yep, that's for sure. Thanks, Maribel. It looks like we have a question here for you, Jake. You may have seen it in the Q&A. It says, I know you mentioned it's new, but have any other regions or localities adopted or expanded the digital services matrix? And if so, what advice do you have for utilizing this tool to its full potential?
Well, to be honest, no, I think that we are I'll borrow that term from a few minutes ago, pioneers, to my knowledge, in this, but that doesn't mean that we want to remain pioneers. What we want to do is to have that be part of community building. And I think that what I would emphasize as being important to, and by all means, reach out to us and we would be happy. We're not looking to keep this information or these ideas to ourselves. So Rachel, reach out to me and I'd be happy to speak with you and to share any information that I have. I think that the keys, though, are things that we've talked about throughout this. And I mean, it's things like trust, it's things like, community building, it's things like trying to make sure that all of those different voices are heard. One of the things as I mentioned in the very beginning of my talk, was that aha moment. And that was that sometimes we all get locked into thinking, okay, we've got to do this, we've got to have this, and we've got to take this fully on. And I think the beautiful thing that I've seen out of the digital access services matrix is the realization by all of these different groups that, wow, there are folks that are out there that are outside of our silo that we can partner with, and we don't have to do everything perfectly because they're going to be able to help us do that. What we can be is we can be the agency of trust that our clients and our constituents are coming to. And then because they trust us, they're going to trust when we say, hey, go over here to this group and they can help you with these needs, and or to this group and they can help you with those. So I know that that's sort of a general answer, and I'd be happy to dig deeper into it. But I think that this is something, the responses that we've gotten have been so positive. This is something that can be replicated in communities across the country with real value.
Thank you, Jake. That's super helpful. And I love the insight about how it's not all on us, you know, and the more we reach out and the more interviews you do, John, the more you realize how many people can and want to be a part of this if you are talking about it and sharing in the right way, which you all are doing in such an impressive way. We did have one question about sustainability. Any thoughts on that someone would like to speak to?
I saw that question, Jenny, and I was going to throw in on sustainability. And I think what you heard from Jake as well is that timing's everything. This project started out of a need that was seen and development occurred. And that's how important it was to bring all this together. You heard Kiera talk about the 125 plus curated reports and resources and all of that work coming together, the webinar stations that we've had, the 6 of those, but building upon that. And I'll go back to that, what I said earlier about starting off with, as Jake mentioned too, a smaller tent and moving to a bigger tent, expanding in the community to not only just include strengthening people, organizations, and the community, but bringing business and education and the media and government involved. Sustainability is reliant upon everyone realizing the need to work on a project like this to uplift your entire community. And once that's visualized by having everybody continue to be a part of the discussion, you can't really stop it. This has really got a life of its own, and it can continue.
Thank you, Sherry. Any last thoughts or comments from any of the presenters? All right, thank you.
Just thank you for the opportunity, for letting us share our story. And I posted my email in the chat if anybody would like to continue the conversation or has more specific questions that percolate after you log off the webinar, as they often do for me. Please feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to connect you to the right person to do that.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate that offer, and we'll make sure people know how to reach you as well after the webinar. Thank you so much. So I would like to, you know, I sit here, I feel like I'm just still like all of the things that you've talked about are percolating in my mind. And I've been so impressed with all of the different ways that you've gone about thinking about this and making sure that you're doing this work in a way that will be accessible for all, not only digitally, but that the program itself will be accessible. And so thank you so much for sharing with us, John, Sherry, Jake, Kiera, Maribel, Margie, Elizabeth, Lori. I've learned from each of you, from your comments, and I'm so inspired by the work that all of you are doing. And so again, thank you to the Patterson Foundation and the Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading for sharing, being willing to share this with us and share so many of your resources as well. On the next slide, I would like to just remind you that we have a number of fantastic state events that are happening during GLR week, and you can go to our conference website to learn about those events, and some of them you are also able to sign up for if you are interested in participating. You also can sign up still for our plenary event that happens tomorrow. It's the Care Fund, a philanthropic initiative to meet the moment. So again, go to the website to sign up for tomorrow's plenary session, as well as to check out speaker and event lineups for that session, to access resources and recordings and all of the materials related to our GLR Week 2021. I want to thank all of you again for joining us, and we will hope to see you tomorrow at one of the events happening. Have a great afternoon, everyone.